Greetings, system failure listeners. Nate here in the great state of Maine and Brian down there in the equally great state of Rhode Island. Brian, what is going on, man? It has been a week and a half since our last pod, so I'm excited to chat with you.
Yes, it has been a hot minute. It's always good to get back together, do a spot of podcasting. I would say that, it's kind of cooling off a bit outside. It's like 7 degrees, and you kind of want to wear a hoodie, but it's still like crazily humid, so you get like extremely sweaty. So, I don't know, but it is moving into being fall. So.
Yeah, buddy, we got the Patriots out taking the field, which is exciting stuff. And your comment there makes me think of the conundrum of being a school-age child in Maine in the months of, like, especially September, but early October too, where it's like cold in the morning and you're going to need a jacket, but then to get on the school bus. But then by 10 o'clock, you don't really need the jacket anymore, and you just start carrying it around the rest of the day because you end up with a normal, like a normal 70-degree day, like you're saying, by the time the afternoon rolls around. But you still need that light jacket to battle the nippy, chilly mornings as the days get shorter and we head back into winter. I can't believe we're already on summer's swan song. It feels like we just did Memorial Day weekend, but I don't know. I guess it's been a hell of a summer.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. It's just another week here, and we'll be on to September.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, how's Florida, man?
It was good, yeah. So we recorded the last podcast early. We usually record every week, but we had to record a couple days early because I was headed down to the great Sunshine State for just a little visit to hang out with my old chums down there in Florida. We were just down there for a brief week. I just switched my working from home position from Maine to Florida for the week. That worked out pretty well. It was really good to see everyone. It's been a while since I've been in Florida. In August, I once lived there for 8 years between 2002 and 2010, and so I did experience 8 Augusts down there in the swamp. But man, your body does not acclimate it. It was like every single day I got up and Google would have sent a excessive heat warning. Like we got a couple of those up in Maine this summer. But every single day you get the excessive heat. Watch out, it's going to be 95 degrees again. And of course, you get those thunderstorms that roll through every single afternoon. Like the sun beats down on the Florida Panhandle and it beats down on the Gulf of Mexico and creates these billowing clouds that then blow west to east over the state. So you start out with a nice clear day, but then by 2 or 3 o'clock, all that heat has built up these big thunderheads that roll over the state and drop torrential rains and electrical activity. But one thing that I had forgotten that I enjoyed about Florida was the verticality of their clouds. For the weather-related reasons I just mentioned, the clouds in Florida, they pile up vertically. Whereas here in Maine, we get to whatever the weather is, the clouds tend to all be at a similar altitude. Down there in Florida, you get those big anvil-headed thunder clouds that they're like thousands and thousands of feet in vertical height. And it makes for a really cool, 3D effect, which I forgot how much I enjoy that and how distinctive the Florida skies are based on the distinctive geography of that state.
Nice. So are you going to move down there or what?
Well, it's just a little too hot. I think if the System Failure podcast ever took off and became an international sensation, like we are sure it will at some point, Brian, I think that probably we would just have to, if we were going to consider a second home or have 2 houses, we don't even have 1 house, so we're getting way out over our skis here. But I think if based on this last trip, if we were to do that, we would have to make that second home in New Jersey where Tracy's friend Croup is located. Tracy is like my lovely fiance. She you go up over the bridge, out of New York and into New Jersey, and all the waste treatment plants and the power plants, all of the infrastructure for the city is there on Jersey's North Shore. And you especially the waste treatment plants, you get a funny smell. But Tracy's got her head out the window like a golden retriever, just drinking in that New Jersey air. She just loves that state. Most of New Jersey is really nice. I just make a little joke about the waste treatment plants that are just across the river from New York. But that's where you come in, Brian, because I just happen to know that your employer has a major office down there in the city of Lake Mary, Florida, to the north of the north of Orlando, not Atlanta, Georgia, but Orlando, Florida. And so we have decided to volunteer you, Brian, to transfer to Lake Mary and get a nice 2-bedroom apartment so that Tracy and I can come down there all the time and use that 2-bedroom apartment. So instead of moving to Florida or getting a second home in Florida, our plan is to send you as our like meat shield to live in the swamp, and then we can visit anytime. I wonder what you think of this capital plan, Brian.
Brave the hot summers. Well, it's going to be well, for my work, it's like New England, Texas, and California, and Florida is kind of like a different company essentially.
A different company.
I mean, it's not like any of the offices, you know, for our particular division, are in Florida. So I mean, it'd be basically like switching companies, although it might be slightly easier. But basically, it's a different company though, for the most part.
Well, dang man, you're crushing my dreams here.
I don't know. It'd be cool to live in Florida. You know, you'd become like a Disney adult. And,
Yeah. Well, just one thing where you live now there in North Slatersville, you're kind of in no man's land between like Providence and Boston. Would you agree with that? Is that kind of how it seems to you? I only have visited your new abode the one time to help you move in, but it seems like you are in the middle of no man's land. Agreed or disagreed?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably more no man's lands like in Maine, for example. But I mean, probably about as much of a no man's land as it could be between those two, metropolises.
Well, all I'm saying here, with the understanding that it's impossible for you to transfer to Lake Mary, I'm just saying that there is a lot of people in the Orlando metro area, and a bunch of them already know you. You'd have a tailor-made social group to interact with. I don't know. I feel like it could be a good thing. But this business about the Lake Mary office not being part of your business proper seems like a major impediment to realizing this dream.
Well, I believe the housing rates are better in Florida. So I don't know.
Housing is relatively Orlando metro area. It's just it's not confined by a peninsula the way that Manhattan or Boston or even Portland, Maine is confined by geography. So it just sprawls out infinitely in all four corners of the compass into the surrounding, marshy swampland without anything to constrain it. So they've had the housing situation is definitely better down there for renters like you and me. So that could be an additional benefit. It could be fun, but I don't know. If you ever have a chance to move to transfer to Lake Mary, which it sounds like you will not, I highly recommend you take it, Brian.
All right. Well, if the podcast goes global, maybe
we can make it happen. The lovely Tracy and I flew on Breeze Airlines to get down to Florida. It was a $195 round trip. That explains partially what we were thinking going down there to visit Florida in the hot month of August. $195 round trip nonstop from Portland, Maine to Orlando's International Airport seems it is a hell of a deal, and we would definitely do that again. I did get a $100 flight credit for my next flight because they had something of a disaster on the way back. So our friends with whom we were staying during this trip live about an hour north of Orlando International Airport. Obviously, MCO is near Disneyland, south of the city, and my dear friends live substantially north of the city in D-Land, Florida. And so they, with about an hour drive from D-Land all the way down to Orlando International Airport, we didn't want to make them drop us at the airport for our 6 a.m. flight on Friday. The idea was to fly from 6 to 9 and then get back to work here on Friday morning. So we ordered like a black car. We didn't trust like Uber or Lyft to pick us up. Uber, they're not like reliable, right? You tell them you want to pick up at 3:45 in the morning, but then the Uber app just starts trying to find you a ride around that time rather than actually scheduling you one. So we decided to book with get a black car from an actual reputable taxi company. And that all worked out great, except for at 11:26 p.m., before we were supposed to wake up at 3:30 a.m. for a 3:45 pickup, we got the text from Breeze Airlines saying, your flight time has been rescheduled. It's no longer leaving at 6 a.m. It's now leaving 10 hours and 45 minutes later at 4:45 p.m. And so we were like, oh my God. So I tried to call the taxi company and move the time of the pickup, but they weren't answering their phone at 11:30 at night, unsurprisingly. And so we were kind of annoyed that, and then the other thing about Breeze is that they're able to be cheap because they don't have actual customer service. They do everything through like chat or through text message. So there's no number you can call to be like, hey, you really kind of screwed up my workday with this 11-hour flight delay. Is there any other? Can you book us with another airline? Is there another itinerary that might work better? So it was none of that. We just kind of had to accept that we could go. I could use their app to choose to fly out to Columbus and only do a 6-hour layover in Columbus and then fly to Portland from there. I could leave a little earlier, but we ended up having to take that 4:45 flight, which I guess worked out okay. But yeah, so Breeze Airlines, nice and cheap, but be advised that that they don't really have customer service. So anyway, I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, thinking I was going to have to go out and tell the driver, sorry, we don't need you. Can you come back at 2 p.m.? But actually, the someone at the taxi company called me about 3:35 when the driver was 4 minutes away, and we got to fix the departure time in that moment. So a little bit hairy coming back. Flights often get delayed by an hour or two, but I guess what happened was the plane was just broken that they were going to use to fly us out at 6 a.m. And it wasn't until 11:30 the night before they decided to bring in a whole different plane, and I couldn't get it till midday. So for that connection back up to Portland. So it was a bit of an inconvenience flying back, but man, I would say you couldn't put a price on the value, but you really can. $195, not a bad, not bad for round trip to Orlando. It was well worth it, even with the cost of the black car figured in, and especially with a nice $100 flight credit for my next, hopefully on time flight with Breeze Airlines. So that was pretty good, I got to say. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it's just like Spirit Airlines where you have to pay to have a bag, or I my backpack, I knew it was slightly bigger than it would fit in the seat under me, but I still counted as a carry-on item. You just have to hope that you can sneak that backpack in the overhead storage bins, which we did. Even with the full flight down, no problem. So all in all, I would fly Breeze again, despite the hiccups coming back. And now we are home, and I will say, after a week of like being in someone else's house, try not to screw up their personal space. It's a relief to get back home, where everything's under my own control. And here I have my real chair, which is great for the old back, and I've got my whole computer set up. So it's traveling is fun, and coming home is almost as sweet.
Did any melees break out on the Breeze flight?
Much to my disappointment, everyone seemed to be well behaved and well ordered. I guess Breeze hasn't gotten that reputation for melees that you're talking about, Brian, where people would throw hands for whatever seat disagreement they had. You see all kinds of videos online with melees, and it was like always Spirit Airlines. But Spirit is now defunct, and so I guess Breeze is the new budget carrier. I guess it was founded by the same guy that founded JetBlue back in the 2000s. And so hopefully Breeze can get that reputation, and we can go back to enjoying the atmosphere of a friendly melee as you transit the skies.
You gotta have that in-flight entertainment,
Yes, yep, yeah.
All right.
So one thing about the crew down in Florida, all my chums down there, I mean, it was for me, like I think for both you and me, Brian, we spent the John Stewart 2000 Iraq War, George Bush era thinking that if we could just get some Democrats in office, we could solve all of our problems, right? It was like, that's how that was my thinking in the 2000s. Like, we wouldn't have any more endless foreign wars. We could prize intellectualism. I can't remember exactly what I can't remember everything that I thought back then, but I do remember being thinking that we just got to be on Team Blue, and it's us, Team Blue, against Team Red. Does that match your conception, Brian, of how the 2000s went for you?
Well, when Obama ran on Hope and Change, we got him elected into office. I just assumed everything was going to be fixed, right?
Yeah. That in the 2000 election, I really thought was going to be a major turning point. But then I also got.
Hang on, I guess I got to say is I felt like we had saved the world basically when elected Obama. Was how I felt.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too. It was like a huge relief. It was like the evil empire had been defeated and all was right with the world. But then nothing was right with...
Little did we know that his whole cabinet was, selected by Citibank or whatever.
That's it. Yeah, I was going to reference that. We found out, I voted for Obama in 2012, thinking that, all right, well, maybe the first term of Obama, not a lot. We didn't exactly hold the bankers to account for the fraud perpetrated upon us during the lead up to the 2008 financial crisis. And it was true that we had launched another war in Libya, which was most unfortunate, and that we were, I think Syria was 2013. I think it was after the 2012 election. But so I still voted for Obama in 2012. But that was really about my curtain call voting for the Democrats at that point, because we had the WikiLeaks revelations come out, Brian, which you got out ahead of me and referenced there, which is exactly right. I mean, that's exactly the right reference. We found out that Obama, far from prosecuting any bankers for their many misdeeds in the lead up to 2008, opted instead to have Citibank approve his cabinet members. Not great. And so, it does seem like Obama left the country in a far worse place than he had, when he had arrived, which was incomprehensible to the 2008 version of yours truly. And then, of course, the sandbagging of Bernie Sanders in 2016, the Debbie Wasserman Schultz having to step down as the DNC chair, and it coming out in court that the DNC had, furnished Hillary Clinton with the debate questions, but not Bernie. All of that really, because my particular sob story was a student loan sob story, and that Bernie Sanders was going around campaigning on the exact antidote that I desperately needed those 10 years ago, to see them sandbagged by the Democrats turned me against the Democrats forever. I think I'll vote for Troy Jackson still for senator this year, but I'm very, very selective about ever voting for those sinister Democrats. But I don't think that any of the things that we just mentioned that have turned us against the Dems, I don't think any of those were factors for the crew down in Florida. So what I'm saying here is, it seemed like the folks I was talking to, they were still kind of in that Team Red versus Team Blue mentality, as if the rise of Donald Trump is the problem, and not not a symptom of endless foreign wars and bank bailouts and tax cuts for the wealthy that have delivered our country to the precarious state in which we find it today. But I will say that it seems like the ice is thawing. I think especially some of the folks down there who are a little more politically literate, like it is to say they maybe follow the news more, seemed like they had finally had enough of the red versus blue paradigm. I do believe it is my concerted contention, my considered contention. That's the word I'm looking for. Considered contention that dividing American society into the red half of the tennis net and the blue half of the tennis net, and have them endlessly, hold serve against each other. I think that is intentionally, that is the goal of the way that the news media and that social media functions. These legacy media and social media outlets are, of course, owned by billionaires, and what the billionaires don't want is for all of us to come over the wall at them for not just the amount of cash they've hoarded, but for the nefarious things they do to make their money. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but Meta is being sued out in California for their infinite scroll function that addicts children, giving teenagers eating disorders, causing depression, and I mean all of the negative effects that come. Like social media is a great example. So it does seem like I got some reports that folks in Florida had it with social media and finally cut themselves off, which was great to hear, because those infinite scroll platforms, they try to, they want to shock you or to outrage you into continuing to engage. And this is how they keep you locked in their app, just thinking that, oh my God, we have maybe the Donald's an agent of Moscow or some ridiculous thing like that. When the real problem has always been the tax cuts for the wealthy, the endless foreign wars, and the bank bailouts, right? These are contiguous. I mean, this is like the Clintons did this. The Bushes did this. Obama did this. And now the Donald's doing it too. And people voted for the Donald, I think, not because they're deplorable, as the left-leaning media outlets would have us believe, but I think that the vast majority of people who support the Donald did so because they wanted to get out of the trap of endless foreign wars and Epstein file cover-ups and bank bailouts, and tax cuts for the wealthy. And and the Donald administration, I think, has the Donald's administration has completely given up the ghost on this front. They've just totally fallen in line and are doing what the institutional powers want them to do, like the deep state wants them to do. And I think that has the Donald's. That's why the Donald's approver rating is hovering around 30%. Some of the lowest of all time. And I think we've got a great opportunity here to stop being enraptured by the blue versus red tennis match and start to realize that we aren't going that societal stability itself is forfeit here if we cannot get control of and discipline our billionaire class. Anyhow, it was interesting to see the good people in Florida. Some of them still had their eyebrows up, but some of them were starting to realize that the fix has been in this past 10 years during the Trump era, and that it's not that the propaganda makes the situation appear like the Trump is a unique evil, but the real evil here is the endless foreign wars, the bank bailouts, the Epstein files, and tax cuts for the wealthy. So anyway, it's interesting to see that crew down there in a state of transition. I didn't quite know how much to fly my own flag. There was at one point, someone made a sarcastic comment about Maha, and I was like, "Should I pull up, Brian, the picture of you and me, with our arm around RFK Jr., or should I just let it slide?" I ended up letting it slide, but I don't know. Speaking of RFK, Brian, what's your latest opinion on this guy? Like, I really was all in for RFK at the time that you and I heard him speak. That was before he joined the Donald's election team, before he became joined the Maha movement or whatever, before he joined with Trump, and so he was just running for president as an independent at that time. I have seen crazy headlines about RFK pop up on Reddit, but every time I click on the actual article or news story, it's like the post title on Reddit gave some wildly different take than what the actual news article or clipping would merit. I wonder what your latest thoughts on Mr. RFK Jr. are, Brian.
Well, I don't think that the administration. I wouldn't blame the administration's failings on him. I don't know. Like RFK seems like a reasonable enough person, I guess. I mean, he was a little bit crazy. There was that bit where what did he chop the head off of a bear and put in his car or something?
I think the bear was already dead. It was a roadkill, and I think this was in like upstate New York or something like this. That's the story, as I understand it, that they collected a bear that had already been roadkilled. I don't.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I guess nothing's really happened to sour my opinion on RFK in particular. What I would say about the Donald and your cohorts in Florida, in the Sunshine State, is, I mean, I do think that, well, some people, like I saw Bill Burr, he was making fun of people for voting for the Donald in 2024. He'd be like, oh, how could I have seen this coming? Well, that's maybe a fair criticism, but I still think it's best to vote for the candidate who comes out and says no more wars and whatnot. And then when it becomes a spectacular failure, I think that helps people get past the sort of the two-party paradigm, basically, and it sort of snaps them out of the hallucination. So I think it's for the best. And then I don't have any strong feelings against RFK.
Yeah, boy, that's really it. I think that I talked for like 5 minutes there, and you really condensed it down into a single sentence. What my hope here is that for the people on the Donald side, I'm hoping that like the spectacular failure of the Donald 2.0 would be a wake up call for them in the way that the sandbagging of Bernie Sanders was a wake up call for me. The more people who can get their head above water and see the left versus right, the blue versus red game for what it is, right? The better off we're all going to be. So I just have, it seems to me that we'd ought to look for the silver lining in the dark cloud of this recent war in Iran and the ongoing cover up of the Epstein files, in the sense that no one's going to be able to credibly believe that the that Trump is the escape hatch from the left-right march of the of Republicans versus Democrats that we usually can't escape from. So I think it's going to be pretty clear that voting for someone like the Donald is, in fact, not the escape. I got to think that for all but a tiny minority of the Donald's hardcore supporters, right? This is going to be the wake up call for them. That's going to turn them against Republicans, like the Obama administration turned me against the Democrats. So I don't know. That's my hope, Brian.
Yeah, and I guess I would just further add. I mean, you would think that the Donald. Well, he's like an independently wealthy guy. He was basically a Democrat, right? And went to, like, I think the Clintons' weddings and whatnot, or at least was hanging out with them at certain times.
I believe the Donald was a lifelong Democrat prior to 16. I believe that's right.
Yeah. And so, like, he's not really a Republican. He did some pandering to, the far right Christians of the nation by saying some stuff about Jesus, but I don't think anyone takes it seriously. And so, well, it just goes to show you, like, what it's actually going to take to try to, stop this war machine, basically, or this corporate socialism machine, or all the ills of our current system, right? It's going to take more than electing some sleazy, independently wealthy guy. And obviously, voting for any kind of establishment candidate, like the Democratic Party, is just going to not even let anything like that happen. And I don't know. It just it is awakening to what the situation is, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's it. You need something to lure you out of Plato's cave, right? You need like some Morpheus to offer you the red pill. You need someone to kind of. Yes. Some kind of a catalyst to get people to wake up from the matrix in which they currently slumber. That's just it, Brian. Yeah. I will say this. When I first moved to Florida in 2002, I brought with me a sort of, I don't want to say like bigotry, but like I had this sense of northern superiority. Like people in the South, like, walk slower, and they had funny accent, and they all talk with a southern accent. And I would make fun of, like, I remember there was a Family Guy episode where, like, the Family Guy crew went to Bumblescum, Alabama or something. That was the name of the town, Bumblescum. It was all making fun of the South. I do, like, this was in my, like, when the new atheists were popular. This was my hardcore. Like, I just thought that like the South was all about anti-intellectualism and praising Jesus. And I always thought that was, laughable. Or I did think that was laughable for a couple years, but then the charm of the South, with the Spanish moss hanging from his trees and the slower way of life, and even the Southern drawl, really started to grow on me. And I really regretted that I had been close-minded about Southern culture when first moving down to Florida. And that really both the culture up here in the North and the culture down there in the South have a lot to recommend it. One of my buddies was complaining about everyone being Christian, and going to church. And I was like, well, yeah, it's not really my thing to have to report to church every Sunday morning, but I really have come to see the value in Christianity in particular, and maybe religion at large. I mean, the truth is that Christianity is an interesting puzzle box, because on the one hand, you've got child molestations and covering up like rape, like the rape of children. On the other hand, it's a breathtakingly beautiful ideology, one that has made it through the gauntlet of 2,000 years of change and refinement. There is something about Christianity, I think, that is eternal and relevant to our own lives, and there are beautiful lessons to be drawn from it. And then, to mention again, you also have like like priest abuse scandals and like the Inquisitions, and science. The church really does have a lot to answer to. But I think you have to be able to, even if it's not your thing, you have to be able to access the beauty of the Christian religion, without being derisive or dismissive of it. So yeah, I don't know. And interesting. It did seem like people. I could just see where people were at various points in my own journey. I could see that people were. It's like you see those pictures from Mount Everest, and you can see the guidelines stretching out down the mountain, and you can see hikers way down below making their way up the mountain towards you in some of those pictures. That's kind of how I felt. Like I was looking backwards and seeing people climbing the same route that I once climbed. And so I guess that makes me seem like I'm in the advanced class and everyone's just catching up. But it is interesting to see people going through the same stages of grief, maybe, like acceptance, denial, anger, the same stages of grief that I went through with respect to the Democratic Party. Interesting to see folks in different places along that journey. I wonder where our intellectual journey will take us next, Brian. One never knows what foreign shores you might land on.
I'm sure that we are, in fact, Sherpas up the great, intellectual mountain, and not, detractors of some kind.
Yeah, I'm sure of it too. I do think that we are the subjects of the most sophisticated con in history. Just with the advent of propaganda. I mean, obviously, the Third Reich, Hitler and his crew made revolutionary use of propaganda from using loudspeakers and radio and TV and newspapers, right? That one to many form of communication was something that the German government mastered under Hitler, and it's something that our current government, also does. They have a very sophisticated propaganda operation. But the advent of the many-to-many communication style that is social media, as opposed to the one-to-many broadcasting style that is the legacy media, has been really interesting too, because that's created a whole new novel intellectual prison to store people in. And I think that those two combined, the legacy media plus the new social media, have created the most sophisticated propaganda apparatus that humankind has ever had to contend with. And so it's not an easy thing to get out of and to escape. So,
the propaganda machine, it's part panopticon and then part propaganda.
Yeah, man, that's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that aspect, Brian. Yeah, it is a panopticon. That's part of it too. That's going to be critical to keeping control. And of course, the Third Reich had their secret police, the Schutzstaffel, and the East German state had the Stasi. There's all kinds of examples of that kind of panopticon business in older versions of these kinds of societies, but never the electronic surveillance that we get that's represented by these flock cameras that are apparently now in every corner.
Yes.
So yeah, panopticon's a great point, and it's a crucial ingredient of the propaganda environment we find ourselves in. So that is interesting. And so the final cherry on this Florida Sunday is this woman, Angie Nixon. She came out of nowhere to win the state's Democratic Senate nomination on Tuesday. So it was fun to be in Florida for that. This woman, Angie Nixon, she was like a state rep for 3 terms or something like that. I had no idea who she was, but she has now become the first DSA candidate ever to run for national office. She is officially the Democratic nominee. She'll go up against the Republican nominee for the Florida Senate and hopefully be one of Florida's 2 representatives to Washington after that. Notably, she trounced the centrist Alex Vindman. This guy Vindman was heavily involved in the Donald's impeachment during his first one of the Donald's impeachments during his first term. So it's interesting that this guy, this Alex Vindman, one of these Democratic swamp creatures who's like a centrist. He had heavy AIPAC and corporate support and lost by a full 12 points. This guy Vindman had outraised Angie Nixon by 19-1. I mean, that's when you get that AIPAC money, it's easy. You're flush with cash. I guess his war chest was about $16 million. Compared to Nixon having raised less than $1 million. She didn't even have a TV campaign. She couldn't afford the TV ads. So this was a resounding victory. We had the one loss of what's her face, Francesca Hong, out there in, was it Minnesota or Michigan? Michigan, I think. But this was another Wisconsin. Thank you, Brian. Very good. One of those northern, Midwestern states. But Angie Nixon, man, it's exciting to see the DSA drumbeat continue. It gives me great hope that perhaps we really are in the process of transcending that pernicious left-right paradigm between the red ties and the blue ties.
Well, I'd certainly take a DSA candidate over an AIPAC centrist, right?
Of course, yeah, that's the name of the game. I think you were making a big deal about this the last couple of podcasts, Brian, and I'm just going to echo it here, but I think the thing we want is ultimately to end up in a situation where we can have the socialists battle against the libertarians for the true soul of this country. That's my fantasy, and what I am hopeful, I'm hopeful we can get there at some point, and the election or the victory of this Angie Nixon seems like another step in the right direction.
A titillating fantasy indeed.
Absolutely, Brian. And by way of changing topic here, I did see that Andrew Wilson, the noted conservative debater, had actually ended up debating Candace Owens this past week. But the debate was 4 hours long, and I just didn't have time in my travels to Florida to listen to it. Although I did hear plenty of clips, and I got to enjoy the analysis of Messrs. Smith and Bernstein on one of the more recent Part of the Problem podcasts. I wonder, Brian, did you have time to take in the entire 4 hour spectacle?
I sure did.
Wow. What? Give us a review, man. I mean, from what I heard in the clips, like old Andrew Wilson, who had paid out $300,000 to lure the 7 months pregnant Candace Owens into this debate, kind of floundered, I suppose. Can you tell us what the debate was about and how you felt it went?
Sure. Well, as far as entertaining debates go, I mean, I don't think it's in the pantheon of like great all-time debates.
I see.
Where you got like Dave Smith against Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Donald Trump against an A-League Joe Biden, or Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton too. I think was like extremely desperate.
The second debate in 2016. That was a television event for the ages.
But let's see. I mean, to some extent, if your gripe against Candace Owens is that she does not have any like actual proof of a conspiracy, well, I suppose Andrew Wilson was vindicated in that point. But I don't think that anyone really thinks that anyway. I think there's like a lot of like circumstantial evidence, right? Like there's people are suspicious of Israel because the day after Charlie Kirk died, Netanyahu was saying that Charlie Kirk never wavered in the support of Israel. And then Candace Owens gets these text messages and then releases them, saying that he was in fact wavering in his support of Israel, right?
Yeah. And that I think was the main thrust of the debate here. Is there anything? Do we believe that there is, that there is skullduggery afoot with the Charlie Kirk assassination of last summer? And it was Mr. Wilson had the negative that this is just a case of a lone gunman. I love that argument. Just a lone crazy man, nothing to see here. And Candace Owens, I think, took the affirmative on the resolution that indeed, no, there is plenty of evidence that the fix is in with respect to the murder of Mr. Kirk. Agreed, more or less?
Yes. That's certainly, there's just a lot of like circumstantial evidence that's like extremely questionable. I think that Candace Owens was vindicated on her point that there is lots of like crazy circumstantial evidence are questionable, or reasons to have questions. I mean, I guess on the alleged 30-06 that killed Charlie Kirk, there's like 5 sets of fingerprints, and apparently Tyler Robinson's, the accused shooters, his are like the most degraded, and Andrew Wilson just said he didn't find that to be very compelling. And I don't know, I don't know how fingerprints work, or if you could wipe them off or something. So I just want to play this one clip.
All right, I'm ready for it.
And this is kind of like the clip from the debate, and I think it's just kind of interesting here. So I shall endeavor to share my screen and play this. All right, here we go. 1 second.
Or all of them. Which one of the charges against, or all of them, do you think Tyler Robinson is guilty of?
The specific charge?
Yeah.
So what I think is that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, but of the 7 charges that he's being charged.
Yeah, can we list them real quick? I'll tell you exactly which ones. We'll pull them up.
Well, do you know any of the charges he's up for right now?
Yeah, of course. But I want to make sure that we have them listed.
Yeah, but like can you name one? Because my general perspective is that you don't actually care about this case. You're not following the case.
That's the question. You're just not following it enough.
It seems pretty, like, if you're going to engage, you're going to say the evidence is overwhelming that Tyler Robinson is guilty. I just think that you should, like, can you tell me one
then let's get
charge
that he's... You can really, this is a great
No, you just got to ask me, play clips out of context, put me in the hot seat, so please just answer the question.
This is fair. Name all 7 since you've been following the case.
Okay, sure. You
Go
name
ahead.
you name one.
Yeah, you named all 7.
I'm happy to do that, but can you name one?
I think he's been charged with murder.
That's actually incorrect.
Okay, great. Now name all 7.
He doesn't even. This is like
Name all 7.
and I
Can you name all 7?
I can't.
Then do it.
Sure, you don't have to
Do it. No, do it. I'll count them. Go ahead.
You don't
Name
have to put
'em.
your fingers up. I
Okay,
can do
I'll
that.
name them.
Yeah, sure.
Name 'em.
The first charge is aggravated murder because that's what carries
Okay,
a death sentence
so
in the
murder.
state of No,
Next.
that's not. That is literally not murder.
Okay.
And so just for people, no, I don't have to do it in a time limit. There's nothing going on. And just to explain to people the difference of why that really matters and shows that he doesn't actually care about this at all is because aggravated murder, it's narrowly defined
Just
and because
avoiding
it
the
carries
question.
a death sentence. I'm not going to answer the question.
Okay,
You're
I'm
just going to
waiting.
recognize that your strategy of thinking that people are intimidated when you try to put a time constraint doesn't work, and you'll be better the next time you do
I
this
got
one.
it. I got it. Give me the other ones.
The more you cut me off, the longer I'll take. Do you want to just wait for me to finish of why that's a big difference so that
No, I
people
just
don't walk
want you
away?
to list the charges.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. You just don't get to pretend there's a time constraint for me to do that.
Well, how long does it take you to list 7 charges?
Because I'm speaking. You just got
It
to.
sounds like you're just delaying it because you don't know.
I know all 7 of them.
Then
And I'm
tell
going to
me
say
them.
again, because you're going to get embarrassed. You don't have to rush this. I'm also showing an example of a very flawed debate strategy. I
Okay,
actually
well,
am
I
under
got
no
one.
time constraint.
I got one.
Great. The second charge is the felony discharge of a weapon. The next 2 charges are for obstruction of justice.
Okay.
The next 2 charges are for witness tampering. And the
What's
final,
the specific charges, though?
that is them. Obstruction of justice,
Both of
obstruction
those?
of justice, witness tampering.
Okay, and there's no other specifics to them.
Well, I can tell you why he's being charged. with it.
Just the charges and then 7.
Yeah. See, the bad thing is when you try to be an a-hole and it doesn't work.
What's the 7th?
The last charge is violence.
Well, the last charge is discharging like a weapon in front of a child or something like that, or committing violence in front of a child.
Man, how are you going to pay out $300,000 to invite Owens to come to debate you, but then not have checked out a list of the actual charges against Mr. Mr. Robinson, right? You're claiming that he's guilty. You're taking the position that there's more, that it's that's very likely that he's guilty, but you don't even know what he's guilty of. That is very interesting. I can't believe the man didn't pull up a list of charges at some point during the week leading up to this debate. That's really wild, Brian.
Well, see, what's crazy is that Andrew Wilson is supposed to be like a master debater, right? And Turning Point USAA paid Andrew Wilson some amount of money to come and teach Turning Point USA people how to debate. That's what happened like leading up to this. And well, what's crazy, and well, they go on to Andrew Wilson asks Candace Owens if like those 7 charges were provided to her, and then like she pulls out her phone, and then they give it to Patrick Beck-David, the moderator, and he like goes through her phone and messages like looking for if anyone sent her the 7 charges. But I mean, it's a real failure of imagination by Andrew Wilson to presume that Candace Owens, who all she does is think about this Charlie Kirk case, right? And she does like an hour show on it several times a week, that she would not know what the actual 7 charges. It's just the absolute height of hubris. And so,
Yeah, yikes.
It's extremely unfathomable. So, I don't know, not a great outing for Andrew Wilson. So, I don't know. I guess that pretty much sums it up.
You'd mentioned at the top that you didn't think it was going to go down as one of the great legendary debates of all time, like Dave Smith versus Andrew Cuomo or Hillary versus the Donald II in 2016. But do you think there's any possibility or any potential for this debate to move the zeitgeist or to foment suspicion about the mainstream media narrative? Do you think that do you think this debate will be soon forgotten, Brian, or do you really do you feel that Candace Owens did a good enough job to convince people who maybe weren't previously convinced that we really are dealing with some kind of a bizarre cover-up here with respect to the death of Mr. Kirk?
Let's see. That is a good question. I think that 3-minute clip is really bad.
It's a devastating clip.
The people trying to, I don't know, if you're just supposed to kind of believe Turning Point USA under its new management, which immediately after Charlie Kirk dying, has just like supporting the war in Iran and is back to being like this Christian Zionist organization. And you can be sure they're not going to be doing things like platforming debates between, Zionist shill Andrew Hammer and Dave Smith.
Yes.
Is that his name? Something Hammer. Josh Hammer, that's it.
Josh Hammer, yep.
So, I don't know. Hopefully, I mean, all in all, it just isn't that entertaining of a debate, but it did get like a bazillion views. So...
Yeah, I saw that it had racked up some serious numbers out there. It was, and then that wasn't even all the number. I think the numbers I saw was like views on Candace's Twitter page, or something like that. It was like just one of their followings on one platform had like crazy numbers of views. So it does seem like this is out there in the zeitgeist, and a lot of people saw it. But you're saying it was not. Was it hard to get to the 4 hours? Did you find yourself like having to slog to get through it?
Well, I was interested because I love like this clash of viewpoints, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated in trying to like understand how people's worldviews are put together. And so, if you just aren't sympathetic to Candace Owens already, you probably got what you wanted out of this debate, is what I'd have to say. So it doesn't seem like a huge zeitgeist mover, but yeah, I mean, the idea that Candace Owens' opinions, I mean, you could say that she jumps to narratives too quickly, but I mean, she just has a lot of circumstantial evidence, and she does have like legitimate sources. I mean, I guess most famously, the leaked text messages, like after when people were trying to say that Charlie Kirk never wavered in his support of Israel,
Yeah,
are certainly the most damning. Just on the topic of the assassination, well, Jimmy Dore had someone on, and who is this guy? I don't know. He's some kind of military expert, and there's all these like talk of like planes and whatnot, and I don't know. I guess with this guy, he tracked. There's some kind of like Israel military plane that like was flying around at 40,000 feet the day of the assassination, but then like dropped to like 200 feet. And there are these like drones flying around. And so basically, it's this guy's hypothesis that a drone was deployed from this plane and is what shot Charlie Kirk. And his presentation was pretty compelling. And if you think about it, it probably makes a lot more sense to count on a drone to kill Charlie Kirk. I mean, especially in the age of like 2026. I mean, using drones to assassinate people makes a lot more sense than relying on like trans leftist furries to get the job done. So, which is what I tweeted in response, because Dave Collum, Professor Dave Collum, everyone's favorite conspiracy-leaning professor from
Cornell.
Cornell, yeah, he liked my tweet. So,
really, you got Colin liking you up on Twitter. Huh? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, hey. As far as conspiracy theories go about Charlie Kirk, I think that is definitely the best one. It just makes so much sense. Like obviously you'd be using drones to do the assassinations in this day.
Well, man, I'm going to need a verbatim reading of the tweet that managed to attract the attention of Professor Dave Collum. Can you pull that up for us, Brian?
Well, it's pretty much exactly what I said.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, it makes more sense to count on a drone killing than a leftist furry is what I said. Yep.
All right. Well, we'll have to have Colin come around and help you move whenever it comes time to head down to Lake Mary, since you and he are good buddies now.
Yes,
get him to load that truck up.
Like, hey, remember when you liked my tweet? I need to move across the country now.
Well, that's pretty exciting stuff, man. I wish I'd had time to really sit down and chew on this debate, but I do love the idea of the zeitgeist fracturing, like our collective impression of what's real and not real. Like, it's really, really wild to see just how the institutional forces that rule our society are struggling to keep control of the narrative, but they can't quite keep it tamped down. It makes me think of the time when it makes me think of after 1415, after Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, how the Vatican lost control of the narrative, or the printing press started churning out pamphlets faster than the Vatican could hope to track them down and confiscate them. And so they lost control of the narrative. And the result, of course, was the Protestant Reformation with Chest, which is just a brutal. I mean, like between 4 and 8 million people died in the internecine warfare within Europe that was the Protestant Reformation. At the time, people thought that people speculated that maybe the printing press, well, it seemed like a miracle at first, was actually the work of the devil, and because they were looking at all the negative consequences that came from the advent of the printing press, and saying maybe this, like, it's like, the classic deal with the devil, where it seems like you're getting something really good, but then it turns out to be evil. Like the monkey paw curl. You can make a mission, the monkey paw curls, and your wish comes true in some horrible way that you wouldn't want. That's what the folks in the 15th century, the 1400s, were thinking about the printing press. Brian, have you heard of the story of Dr. Faustus, the man who sold his soul to the devil in exchange for strange powers? Faustian bargain. That's where it comes from. This guy Faustus, right? Faust was a play by Christopher Marlowe. Brian, you may remember this man, Christopher Marlowe. He was Shakespeare's rival playwright in Elizabethan London, and one of his most famous plays is about this man Faust, who sells his soul to the devil. And then in the 1800s, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the greatest German language writer of all time, wrote this closet drama. Closet drama is a play that's meant to be read instead of performed. He wrote this closet drama in 2 parts about this man, Faust. Same story. To impress the lovely Marguerite, he sells his soul to the devil in exchange for supernatural powers, only to find out that everything goes wrong. I mean, I think it eventually costs Marguerite her life, and he ends up lamenting his pact with the devil. But the thing is that Faust was based on a real person. Here's the interesting bit. The man who bankrolled the invention of the printing press was named Faust. He was Johannes Gutenberg's business partner, and he famously sued Gutenberg to get control of the device after it was invented. So this idea of like selling your soul to the devil is connected with the advent of the printing press. And I bet a lot of people today are wondering, have we sold our souls to the devil by signing up for a Facebook account? And it has the internet played the same destabilizing role that the printing press once played. It seems like the parallels are nearly identical in the case of the printing press and the internet.
Well, hopefully the internet, proves to be like a redeeming force rather than one of damnation.
Hopefully, yes, I think so. So this Candace Owens debate is an interesting dynamic therein, where you have like the authorities trying to tamp down and control the narrative, and meanwhile, like the internet crazies like you and me and Candace Owens speculating about what might really be going on behind the scenes. So yeah, fascinating stuff. Man, Brian, we only have about 9 minutes left in the podcast. I got a couple of news stories to get through. I can't believe the end is creeping up on us already. But I just maybe I should start with some of these news stories, unless you have a final thought on Wilson versus Owens.
No, man, hit us with some news stories.
Okay, I got 2 for you. The first one is this, very interesting. It's the news came out this week that Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, is being sued by the California AG. And I thought I would just read a short excerpt from the CNBC article about the same. And here we go. This will be quick. Meta says it faces a $1 trillion penalty and damage to its advertising model. But the trial could go well beyond one company. It could even make social media unrecognizable. The states want the court to force Meta to remove certain addictive features from its platforms, Instagram and Facebook. These include infinite scrolling, auto-playing videos, disappearing content such as Instagram stories, beauty filters, and algorithm-dominated feeds. During her opening statements on Tuesday, California's Deputy Attorney General Megan O'Neill said that Meta is choosing profit over safety, hiding the reality of under 13s on its platforms, and that its business model is to hook the users, hold them for as long as they can, harvest their data, and then hide the truth from the public. Quote, the trial is potentially the end of social media as we know it, Kate Winnick, a principal analyst at Forrester, said. Any verdict against Meta would set a massive precedent. Winnick added, these trials are often compared to the big tobacco lawsuits of the 90s, and the outcome will likely be analogous as well. The product is going to be harder for young people to access, and the cultural message around social media is going to change. So I just thought that was interesting. We have long complained about the dynamics of the infinite scroll here on this the System Failure podcast, Brian. I do find it's wicked addictive. It's deleterious to the attention span, and is why I try to avoid the social medias, and just is why I try to get my news from like Wall Street Journal instead of from social media, because I'm trying to preserve my precious attention span. So I think it's very interesting that the law is catching up to Meta down there in California. Very interesting stuff.
Well, dang. Well, hopefully they prevail in their lawsuit, and it would be nice if these social media tools could be reformed in some way that made them quite a bit more positive in their societal impact. So, Godspeed to the lawyers prosecuting that case.
Absolutely. Like you say, they're doing God's work. And the other major news story, of course, the big news this week out of Wall Street is is that the bonds, we've been talking about the bond yields on this podcast, Brian, since we've always talked about them, but we've really been focused on them since the beginning of the Iran war back in March. We have just noticed that the price of the yields on these bonds are creeping up. Now, what does that mean? So like the way that finances work at the national level in Washington is that, obviously the Treasury Department takes in a bunch of taxes every year, and then they also write a bunch of checks every year. And almost always the expenses that go out via check are less than the revenues brought in via tax revenues. And so to close that hole, like to get enough dollars right at the Treasury to pay all of the bills that are on the hook for down there, they have to do a little thing called a Treasury auction, and that is just where you get someone at Treasury to hold the auction gavel, and they borrow money and see who's willing to bid the most to borrow that money. Yeah, well, I guess it's probably more accurate to say that the different the bidders in these bond auctions compete against each other for that sweet supposedly risk-free debt. Like this is obviously with the state has the ability to print its own money, and so I mean, there's no real danger of the U.S. government defaulting on its debt. I mean, obviously, if we print too much money to give to these bondholders interest payments, that will collapse the entire economy. But from the bondholders' perspective, from the folks who are actually bidding at these auctions, this is basically guaranteed return. The whole bond market, I always compare it to this big wedding cake, where the lower base of the cake are these supposedly risk-free U.S. Treasury bonds. And then it's like when Disney wants to borrow money, they don't go to the bank and ask for a loan. They just issue a bunch of corporate bonds, and people are willing to buy those. Like bond traders are willing to buy those Disney bonds because they feel that there's almost no risk of Disney defaulting on their bonds. And then above that, so like the value of various corporations' bonds kind of depends on their reputation, and then the most risky types of investments are like stocks. Like obviously, like you've got your bonds that form the bottom of this cake in the equities market, and then you've got like stocks which are more risky. Right, there's not like a guaranteed return on investment like the U.S. government, or a nearly guaranteed return on investment like buying bonds from Disney. But these are like stocks; they're volatile; they can go up and down. And then, of course, you've got really, really risky stocks like the penny stocks from Wolf of Wall Street. And then you got stocks that generally that are considered a much safer bet, like maybe these big seven stocks like Facebook or Microsoft or Google. And so when the Treasury, when the bond market the bond market with specific respect to Treasury starts going haywire, it means heartburn and dysfunction for the rest of the equities, for Wall Street and for bond traders the world over. The reason, and so because of the Iran war, like if you're sitting at one of these bond auctions and you're ready to bid on the government's issuing bond issuance, right? You got to think like, well, in order for this investment to work for me, it has to overcome inflation. So whatever the expected inflation rate is, right, that's going to have to be factored into what these bond traders will accept. Like if you accept a bond at 1% interest only, but then inflation is 3% throughout the duration of that bond, well, you've lost money and made a poor investment for yourself. So bond traders need to see a profit over and above expected inflation in order to get above breaking even. And so as a result of the massive amount of government spending that's going to have to go on here, that means two things. It means inflation for the broader economy, and it means issuance of more debt. And that means they're going to have to issue more bonds, but they're to the same number of people bidding on the customers bidding on these bonds. So obviously, the more bonds you issue, the more you're going to have to offer to entice potential investors off the sidelines to buy these bonds. So the moral of all this story is that because of the Iran war, you've seen the price of bonds start ticking up and up and up. And now we're at 4.7% for the 10-year bonds. That's bad news for the near term. But the thing that happened this week was that the longer bonds, the 30-year bonds, started ticking up to a disturbing degree. And so our friendly Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent came out this week and announced that they were going to sell a bunch of short-term treasuries to take the money and then use that to buy back the long-term treasuries, thus increasing demand for long-term treasuries and hopefully driving the rates back down to manageable levels. And the thing that's fascinating to me is that this intervention in the markets failed. Obviously, when the Treasury came out and announced they were going to be buying back a bunch of these, they were going to be doubling their normal buybacks of long-term bonds. So basically what this means is between September and November, rather than spending $2 billion buying back long-term bonds, they're going to spend $4 billion. And that caused a brief respite in the creeping up of the price of U.S. government debt, but it then reversed direction and started and is back to 4 points. It's above now where it was prior to the intervention. This is fascinating, especially in light of last week. The Treasury Department announced they were intervening in the Japanese currency markets by buying a bunch of. Essentially, our Treasury Department sold a bunch of euros and used traded a bunch of euros for yen to try to goose the price of the Japanese yen. And that intervention also failed. The Japanese yen prices are back up to where they were prior to the Treasury's intervention. So we are seeing the Treasury Department flailing here, trying to fix the bond markets and not having the ability to do so. Now, I'll just read a few pieces here from the Wall Street Journal piece on this, just to give the flavor of it. But it seems like the bond apocalypse that we have been prophesying and doomsaying about all summer long, Brian, is finally happening here. I mean, this is some truly terrifying stuff when you really think about the broader implications. But let me read the Wall Street Journal story, or at least a few excerpts thereof. This story came out on Friday, August the 21st, and the headline here is "The Wild Week When Scott Bessent Was Schooled by the Bond Market." That's a hell of a headline to be reading the Wall Street Journal. The subheadline is the Treasury Department's announcement of a bond buyback stemmed a sell-off, but not for long. I just highlighted a few bits in here. We've basically covered the story, but it's interesting to see what Wall Street Journal says here. So just consider this passage. Shortly after taking his job, Bessent made the bold claim that the administration could influence the market and drive down yields to lower borrowing costs for Americans. He said the administration would do that by slashing the budget deficit and thus reducing the supply of treasuries and increasing oil and gas production to lower energy prices. Those plans haven't panned out. Just months into his second term, Trump's tariffs set off a crisis in the bond market when investors dumped bonds out of fear that other countries could retaliate by selling their treasury holdings. The market calmed when Trump scaled back the tariffs, but yields began climbing again this year after the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran, prompting Iran to shut down the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz. As energy prices jumped, investors quickly went from betting that the Fed would cut interest rates this year to betting that it would need to lift rates to tame inflation. Then, things got weirder. Oil prices retreated to pre-conflict levels in June, but Treasury yields fell only a little. For the past 2 months, yield on longer-term treasuries in particular have steadily climbed, defying even a run of soft economic data that reduced the chances of a near-term interest rate hike. By early this week, the yield on the 30-year Treasury bond had topped 5.3%, its highest level since 2007. Average mortgage rates have crept back up towards 7%. Bessent's Wednesday intervention seemed to work instantly, but it didn't take long for skeptics to weigh in. And later that day came an unwelcome milestone. U.S. debt had topped $40 trillion for the first time. Overnight and into Thursday morning, the impact of Bessent's move began to fade as long-term yields ticked up once again. Man, Brian, I mean, that is really scary stuff to be reading in the Wall Street Journal, as I already mentioned. Absolutely wild. What did you think, Brian? I mean, you must have seen some of this news popping up this week of the U.S. crossing the unfortunate milestone of $40 trillion in national debt. Did it send a chill through the marrow of your bones like it did me?
Well, the main thing I noticed is that the price of Bitcoin jumped around 20%.
That's right.
When this got announced.
Yep.
Although the S&P is down, well, I guess about 1.5%.
Go ahead.
Mostly the Bitcoin moves with the market, and this is the first time in a while Bitcoin has done something especially divergent. I guess I'd have to imagine like the failure of the yen and the dollar, that probably a lot of international dollars and not just American dollars are moving into the Bitcoin. So I guess that's the main thing I noticed. It certainly is a chilling omen of things to come for sure.
Well, you said it, Brian. I should have mentioned that, but you got to it. That is the debasement trade. You also saw gold jumping in price along with Bitcoin as measured in U.S. dollars, as the specter of massive money printing to cover the increasing amount of cash we owe to the uber wealthy increases. Right, we're already at about $1 trillion in interest on the national debt every year. It's one of the bigger line items. It has exceeded the entire cost of the U.S. military-industrial complex, right? Like the annual cost of the Pentagon is now less than the annual cost of just paying rich people for the pleasure of borrowing their money. And that really leads me to my final point here. You see, we are the victims of a ridiculous scam wherein we, the public, own this money printer, and yet we have been fooled into paying rich people for the pleasure of borrowing their money, as they said. Like, why would a country that issues its own currency ever need to borrow money from its rich? It doesn't, right? The idea here is that instead of taxing the rich, right? This is the dream of neoliberal economics, right? You slash taxes on the wealthy and sell them bonds instead of taxing their money off of them, right? If you're rich, you'd much rather loan the government $1 million of interest. That way you get the $1 million plus back, versus if they just tax that $1 million off you, it's just gone, and that's the end of the story. And so like the cost of borrowing all of this money off rich people is now like $1 trillion every year, and it's only going to go up. And the horror here is that as bond prices increase, the cost of servicing that debt goes up with the cost of the bond prices. And so I really think that could be the thing that we the people are going to realize. Like the politicians are all going to try to gut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security in order to keep feeding all of this interest to the already wealthy. And I think that we are it's like just as the public, I think, has no more stomach for any more bank bailouts, right? I don't think that we are going to be able. I don't think you're going to be able to politically. It's not politically viable to just start slashing people's Social Security payouts so that we can instead take that money and give it to the already wealthy, just so that we don't have to use our money printer, right? And really, we're still using the money printer, right? It's just that they're two separate events. We're still printing the money, but it's just that we're also issuing bonds to try to control inflation. But you could control inflation the same way through the tax system, right? You just, if there's too much money floating around the economy chasing too few goods, you just tax the money where it's pooling up, right? That's a better solution to inflation than just paying the rich for the pleasure of borrowing their cash. So yeah, man, I'm going to be watching the bond market with keen interest over the next couple of weeks. And I think that the bond apocalypse may finally be here. And those are some terrifying chickens coming home to roost.
Well, you'd have to imagine that it's going to be a dramatic couple of years politically, going up into the midterms and then the election in 2028.
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know how much longer it is until they, stage that fake alien invasion, basically.
It's got to be any day now. I'm surprised it didn't happen last year. All right, well, we're well over time here, Brian, but I just had to go on about the bond apocalypse to take us into overtime. It's really, really interesting. But I think that's about all I've got for this week's podcast. Anything that we left out here, Brian?
I don't think so.
All right, well, then I will go into my usual yarn of inviting everyone out there in podcast land to pay us a little visit over at systemfailure.org. There you can enter in your email address and receive the weekly essays written by yours truly right there in your email inbox. Furthermore, if you'd like to get in touch with either Brian or myself, you can accomplish that tidy feat over on the About page simply by clicking on the appropriate name. Okay, Brian, I think that's about it. I will be back on Thursday with the weekly essay read, and then after that, you and I will be back, inevitably, of course, on Monday for another installation of the good old System Failure podcast. Can't wait to talk to you all then. In the meantime, please have a fantastic week for yourself.
All right, see you, folks.